Hey guys, welcome back. In this tutorial, we're going to learn what a primary key is and how to use it. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create the simple table called students with 3 columns. So I have the student ID, name, grade, and then I'm just going to insert some sample data into it. Okay, so 5 rows inserted. So let's just select from this table now. So here we see the 5 records that we just inserted. But let's say if I try to insert this again, it just let me insert a duplicate. So if we select from this students table now, you see 101 is duplicated. We have it twice here with the same student ID and all. So what we can do to avoid inserting duplicates into a table is we can create a primary key on it. So what I'm gonna do here is I'm just gonna drop this table again, and then I'm gonna create the table again, and then I'm gonna use my student ID, and then I'm gonna create a primary key constraint on a student ID. So I'm just gonna say primary key. So this is for a new table. When you're creating a new table, this is how we declare a primary key on a specific column. So now let's just create it. Okay, table created, and now I'm going to insert those records again. So 5 rows inserted. Let's select from the table here. So we see 5 records here. So now I have a primary key constraint on it, meaning it has to be unique. So a student ID has to be unique in each row, so we can easily use it to identify it, and it cannot be a null. So if I try to insert null here for a student ID, this is gonna fail because primary key cannot have null. So see, it cannot have null value. And then similarly, if I try to insert 101 again, because I already have 101, it's not gonna let me because it has a constraint, or you can say it's a rule where it's not gonna let me insert a duplicate in my primary key. So we can use a primary key to uniquely identify a row. So here we created it on a student ID. So now we know that it is going to be unique always, and then it cannot contain a null. Primary key cannot contain a null. So we use it to uniquely identify the record and for data integrity, meaning we know for sure there's not going to be any nulls in that primary key, and then that record is going to be unique. And then if you want to join it to like multiple tables, we can use primary keys to establish relationship across multiple tables. So it's really defining your data integrity. Okay, so this is how you can create a primary key on a table. So what we did is we dropped the table and we created a new table, and we defined primary key on this column. But if you want to add the primary key constraint or rule on a table that already exists, you have to alter the table. So you can just alter the table and include a primary key, but we have to make sure that the student ID is not null. So that's one way of creating it. Okay, now I'm going to show you another example. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create this table called student enrollment with 3 columns. So I have the student ID, course ID, and a date. So let me just create it here, and then I'm going to insert some sample data in here. So 3 rows affected. So let's select from this table now. So now this table contains student ID, course ID, and the enrollment date. So student ID 101 is enrolled in course ID 1. Let's say it's computer science, and then 4 is physics, and student ID 102 and 103 are enrolled in physics. So it has 3 columns. So we have student ID, course ID, and the enrollment date. So student ID and the course ID that they're enrolled in, and the enrollment date. So let's say 1 is computer science. So this student ID 101 is enrolled in computer science, and 4, let's say if it's a different subject, let's say if it's physics, both of these are enrolled in physics. So let's say if I create a primary key on a student ID alone, what's going to happen is I won't be able to create another record for student 101 in a different course. Let's say student 101 wants to enroll in course ID 4. He won't be able to enroll in both physics and computer science, so that's an issue. So what we can do in that case is we can create a primary key on multiple column, which is called a composite primary key. So what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna drop this table, and then I'm gonna create a primary key on student ID, course ID, so the combination of those two are unique. So you can have a primary key on multiple columns based on your situation. And then what we can do here is we are not gonna put primary key in front of student ID here for multiple columns. What we can do is we can just define it in the end. So I can just say comma primary key. So I'm adding a primary key constraint, and in parentheses I can just put the name of the columns I want to define the primary key on. So in this case it's on both student ID and course ID. So parentheses student ID comma course ID. Let's create it now. So what we did is we just created a primary key on multiple columns, and that's what's called a composite primary key or a composite key. So now if we insert these records, we inserted 101, 102, 103, and now what we can do is we can also insert 101 and then let's say course ID 4 here. So if I insert it, it's gonna let me, because now the combination of these two have to be unique. So let's select from this table. So now the combination of student ID and course ID has to be unique, and you see it is unique for 101. So 101 and 1 and 101 and 4, because so this student is enrolled in both computer science and physics. But if we had just created it on student ID, we won't be able to insert a record for a different course ID. Okay, so this is how you can create a primary key on a single column, or a primary key or a composite primary key on multiple columns. If you found this helpful, please leave a like and subscribe to my channel, and let me know if you guys have any questions. Thank you for watching.